Good afternoon. In the previous class, we have seen the physical topologies of networks, and now in today's class, we will see categories of networks. So, usually, whenever we are talking about the term networks, we are generally referring to two primary categories. One is the local area network, and the other is the wide area network or WAN, LAN, and WAN. Now, the category is into which we are dividing these networks are dependent upon the size. So we are dividing it on size or dependent upon the size. So a LAN normally covers short distances and a WAN usually covers uh, long distances, or basically it is actually worldwide network. So network of a size in between. So in between LAN and WAN, we have a network known as metropolitan area network. So metropolitan area network provides connectivity over areas such as a city and a campus. Or usually, if we are talking in terms of physical distances, then this is 2 miles. This will be worldwide, and this will be around 10 miles. Okay. So now let's see a bit let's see in a bit detail about all the three. So first we have a local area network. So a local area network is usually privately owned, first point. So this will be privately owned and links the device in a single office, building or campus. So depending upon the needs of an organization and the type of technology, LANs can be as simple as, suppose if we have two PCs and a printer. So if in our department, if we have 2 to 4 PCs and a printer, then that can also be called a LAN or a local area network. Or suppose if you have a company and um, a 7 floor or 10 floor company, and in that company, if all the computers are linked and they are linked, the computers, the printers, scanners, etc., are linked together, then that is also a LAN. So currently, LAN is, as I said, about 2 miles or a few kilometers. Now, LANs, why do we need LANs? So LANs are usually designed to allow resource sharing. So resource sharing is a capability of LAN between personal resource sharing between whom? So between personal computers or workstations, if we are talking about offices. Now the resources, what are the resources that can be shared? So it can include hardware and software. So hardware is the most simplest example for hardware will be a printer, while for software we can have an application program or data. So a common example of LAN is usually found in offices, as I said. So one of the computers may be given a large capacity drive, and it may become a server, and that central server will be linked to all the other computers. So this is an example. In addition to size, LANs also have one transmission medium. That is, the transmission medium will be either optical fiber, or wired or wireless, whatever, but they will have usually one transmission medium. And the most common, so let me just mention it, one transmission medium. And also the topology, the physical topology used by LAN will be uh, bus, ring, and star. Okay, bus, ring, and star. So usually LANs had earlier LANs had data rates around 4 to 16 megabits. Today, however, we have around 100 to 1000 Mbps. And now, apart from LANs, the new technology that we are using is wireless LAN. That is what you have in your homes, routers and modems, etc. Now, the next thing is, so this actually, the figure that is being shown here is an isolated LAN connecting 12 computers to a hub in a closet. Okay. So now the next is wide area network. So a wide area network provides long distance transmission of data, image, audio, and video information over large geographic areas. So a WAN can be as complex as the backbones that connect the internet, or as simple as before the wired and wireless, if you have an idea or you have used computers earlier, we had this dial-up line. So you had to dial on the system, and that connected the computer to the internet. So it can be as simple as this dial-up, or since we don't have it, so WANs can be simple or complex depending upon the situation. So now uh, we normally have LANs like switched WANs. So what is a switched WAN is basically it connects different end systems. Okay, so the point apart from that, the WANs connect, as I said, connects computers worldwide. That is wide area network. They are not limited to some specific kilometers or miles. They are giving connection worldwide. Now, the next example that we can have is WANs have become wireless right now. Wide area networks are wireless and are the more popular internet technology that is used. So these are a few diagrams. One is the switched WAN concept, and another is the point-to-point WAN. So point-to-point, if you remember the point-to-point concept, that is computer is connected to a single wire to another device, or a resource is connected to another device, and in this way we have a point-to-point connection. Here in this case, we have a switched connection. Okay. Now the next is we can have a heterogeneous network. That is, the network can be made up of WANs and LANs. Now the next topic is layered architecture. So in this topic, we will be discussing the concept of layers in the network models. So we use the concept of layers in our daily life. So let's consider an example of communication between two friends through postal mail. So now why are we considering postal mail is because it has a few steps that can be observed, while the communication right now either through WhatsApp or even mail is email, that is actually is done through network. So we will be studying the networks later. So postal mail is the basic version that we can consider. So the process of sending a letter to a friend would be complex if there were no services available from a post office. Now, what are the tasks when you are sending a letter? So basically, whenever we are sending a letter, we will have a sender and a receiver, and there will be a transmission medium. So in this case, this will be a postman. So sender will go to the post office. So there will be a post office over here, and he will post the letter in the post office. Then there will be sorting of letters and etc. And then finally, a postman will give the letter to the receiver. So this process will be studied in detail in this slide. So tasks involved in sending a letter. So the first thing is the sender has to write the letter, then put it in an envelope and write the address and everything. So and drop it in a mailbox. So there are 3 steps in this case. Okay. Now the letter is carried from the mailbox to a post office. So higher layer will be in this case when we're talking about the sender, the letter writing of the letter and dropping it in a mailbox is the higher layer. Then the middle layer is actually the carrying from the mailbox to the post office. And now how are we dividing the letters? I'll tell that later. So first we'll just see the process, and then the letter is delivered to a carrier by the post office. Now from the post office, wherever it needs to go to another post office, it will be the letter will travel from one post office to another post office. So suppose the sender is in destination A, and sender is at the place A, and the receiver is at the place B. So from post office A to post office B, it has to go through a transmission medium. Then again, the letter is delivered from the carrier to the post office. Then the letter is carried from the post office to the mailbox of the receiver. Okay. So usually when we're talking about Western countries, they have a mailbox attached to their homes where the letters are put in, even if the owner is not at home or the receiver is not at home. So this is that mailbox, and here the mailbox is the post box that we used to see on roads actually, the red colored post box. So now once it is carried from the post office to the mailbox, that is basically it has reached the home of the receiver. Then the receiver will pick up the letter, remove from the envelope and read. Now, what are the higher layers? The higher layers are where the sender and receiver are directly involved. So that is the higher layer. Now, in between, the middle process is considered as a middle layer. And here, in the last step, the yellow boxes, the sender and the receiver is not involved at all. So these are the lower layers. That is, they're not involved in the carrying of the letters from the mailbox to the post office or vice versa. So these are the lower layers. Now, so why do we need a protocol architecture is, so a protocol architecture, or why do we need some kind of rules and regulations for creating a network model? So it is basically a layered structure. That is, so here we have three layers: higher layer, middle layer, and lower layers. In this case of protocol architecture, we have a layered structure of hardware and software that supports the exchange of data. And at each layer of this protocol architecture, we implement common architecture protocols, or common protocols are implemented. That is, common rules are implemented in communication system. So suppose if the rules are different at each, so in this case, if you notice, if we change the rules, or if we change that the letter is written, put in an envelope, and directly it is going to the destination B, that is not possible, right? So if the rules are changed, then it will be difficult to communicate data. So there should be a set of rules that needs to be followed. So each protocol provides a set of rules for the exchange of data. Now, the most widely used protocol architectures are two actually. So we will be studying two architectures which are very important 7-mark answers. So one is the TCP/IP model, or the TCP/IP protocol, and the other is the OSI model. Okay. Now, what are the tasks to be performed by a protocol architecture? So the tasks are: the source system must either activate. So whenever computers are exchanging data, the procedure is quite complex. So if you are transferring file between two computers, then there must be a path between the two computers, either by using a direct communication or indirect communication network. But apart from that, these are the tasks to be performed. Okay, so these four tasks that I have mentioned are the communication protocol between two computers when they are having a direct link. Okay, so the source system must either activate the direct data communication path or inform the communication network of the identity of the desired destination system. So suppose we have a computer A and computer B. Now and even we have a computer C. Now computer A wants to send data to computer B. Now in this case, A first should say that I want to send the data. That is, the data transfer path should be activated or switched on. After that, he should clarify whether he wants to send the data to B or sends the data to C. Now, after that, the source system must ascertain or must confirm that the destination system is prepared to receive the data. So once the source system has said that, okay, I want to send data and I want to send the data to the specific system. Now, he should also know that whether B is ready to receive the data, whether B is switched on, whether B is connected to the network, etc. Okay, so that is the second step. Then, so we have seen the first step and the second step. Then we have the file transfer application on the source system. So when the file is being transferred or the data is being transferred, on the source system, it must confirm that the file management program. So here, once the file is received, it should be able to understand where it needs to be stored. So suppose if you're downloading something on the system, our system automatically knows that it needs to be stored in the downloads folder. So this way, here B needs to know where it has to store the receiving file. Okay, so is prepared to accept and store the file for this particular user. Now, if the file formats used on the two systems are different, one or the other system must perform a format translation function. So basically, if you see these four steps, so this is a general idea. So if you see these four steps, it is clear that there must be a degree of cooperation between the two computer systems. So instead of implementing this entire thing one after the other, the protocol architecture basically divides this all these tasks into layers, okay, or subtasks. So the modules that are arranged in a vertical stack. So they are arranged in this way. So first layer, second layer, third layer, etc. And basically each layer in the stack or each layer in this vertical stack performs a function related to communicate with another system. Then it relies on the lower layer to perform more primitive or more basic functions. So this way, lower layers provide services to the higher layer. And layers should be defined so that changes in one layer do not require changes in other layers also. Now, whenever we are talking about these layers, there is one thing we need to understand. So the layers have three key features. One is the syntax, that is the format of the data that is being sent, and the other is the semantics. So we have three things, just mention it here. So one is the syntax, the other is the semantics, and the last is the timing. Syntax is the format of the data. Semantics is, suppose if there is an error or there is lack of coordination, then there should be some rule for some mechanism for handling that. And timing is basically the speed at which A is sending the data should match at which speed computer B is receiving the data. So these are the three key features of protocol. Now, after that, we will look at the OSI model. So the OSI model is basically the Open System Interconnection Model. So OSI stands for Open Systems. So the name itself suggests that there is a connection or a network between the systems. So Open Systems Interconnection Model. So this was actually established in the year 1947 by an organization known as ISO. So it is quite famous actually, International Standards Organization. And the organization developed this model. So it is a standard that covers all aspects of network communication. So OSI model is for network communication. Okay. So, and it although established, ISO was established in the year 1947, while the OSI model itself was introduced in the year introduced in around 1970s. So now, what is the open system? So, open system basically it is a set of protocols that allows any two different systems to communicate regardless of their underlying architecture or the different operating systems, hardware, software they use. So basically, it is a set of protocols, or we can even say set of rules that allow systems to communicate. Okay, so now why do we need OSI model, or what was the purpose of OSI model? So the purpose of the OSI model is to show how to start communication between different systems without requiring changes to the logic of the system's hardware and software. So OSI model is not actually a protocol, but it is simply a model for understanding and designing. So OSI model is for understanding and designing various different network architectures. So it is basically kind of like a It is similar to a blueprint actually. That is, it can be called a blueprint of how different network architectures needs to be designed. So one thing needs to be clarified here is that ISO, or let me write the full form for this, International Standards Organization. ISO is the organization where OSI is the model. Okay. Now, so this, as I said, established in 1947, this organization created the OSI model, and it was first introduced in 1970s. Now, so it is basically a reference model or a blueprint for designing different. It is a reference model, and for designing various protocol architectures, and also it can be considered as a framework. So it is a reference and a framework for developing protocol standards. Now we will see the, yeah, this is very important. ISO is the organization and OSI is the model. So we'll see the 7 layers of the OSI model. So the 7 layers needs to be remembered perfectly. They're even asked in the Viva as well as in the answers. So now the OSI model is composed of 7 ordered layers. So the first layer is physical layer. So we have to go in this direction, that is the upward direction. So first is the physical layer. Next we have data link, network layer, transport, then session, presentation, and application layer. So whenever we are sending a message, so all of these layers work together to send the message. So now in the next figure, when this shows the layers involved when the message is sent. So whenever we are sending a message, it may pass through from device A to device B, and the message travels from A to B. It may pass through many intermediate nodes. So these intermediate nodes usually involve only the first 3 layers. So as you see, these first 3 layers are directly passing the message. Okay. So now in developing this model, the designers, what they decided is, they created a process for transmitting data to its most fundamental elements. So they identified which networking functions had related. So basically, suppose if we are solving a mathematical problem, then we identify a few steps which can be grouped together, or on which we can apply a formula. So in this case also, the tasks which are similar in nature were divided into different layers. So suppose here each layer defines a family of functions or a family of tasks that are distinct from the other layers. And by defining the layers in this kind, the designers created an architecture that is flexible and robust. So now let's see the, so this diagram, we will see it at the end. Once we complete the OSI model, we'll come back to this again. So before that, we will see an exchange using the OSI model. So in this case, the exchange, organization of the layers, before we start, so here in, so we'll see an exchange using the OSI model. So if you notice, if data is being sent, so if you're talking about text, then at the physical layer, the communication is direct. That is, the physical layer sends the data through the transmission medium to the receiving device. So now, in this example, if you see, the data is sent in the form of bits. That is how we usually send the data through the computers. So at the higher layers, however, communication must move down through the layers on device A over to device B. So computer first gives the data to the application layer. So this layer will take the data, attach its own header. So this D7 is the data and H7 is the header. And then it will attach its own header or we can also call it as a trailer. It is attached to the data. Then the D7 is passed to D6. Then D6 will attach its own header, and in this way, this will keep on going until the layer 2. At layer 2, the entire data is converted into bits and it is sent to the transmission medium, where the transmission medium again converts it, transmission medium passes it in the form of bits to the layer 1 of the receiving device, and then it will go on in this way. So here in the second step, uh, the second layer will unwrap or take its own data, check whichever is the header and the header, and then pass it to the layer 3, and this will keep on continuing. So basically, what we understand is the 7 layers can be grouped into 3 categories. So here we will see in the first diagram. Yeah, so the 7 layers can be grouped into 3 categories. So the first 3, physical, data link, and network layers, are known as the network support layers. That is, they deal with the physical aspects of moving data from one device to another. Physical aspects means the electrical specification, physical connections, physical addressing, what is the address of the system, transport timing, etc. And after that, we have layers 5, 6, and 7. We'll just leave the layer 4. So this layer 5, 6, and 7 are the user support layer. That is, if you remember, we are sending the data. So if the user is sending the data, first we'll send it to the application layer. The application layer will pass it to presentation. These are the user support layers. Okay. And they allow the interoperability between these layers, allow the interoperability between the software systems. Now, what does the transport layer do? Transport layers connect these 2 layers, the user support and the network support, and it links these 2 layers and transmits the data from this user support layer to network support layer. So the upper OSI layers are implemented in the software, while the lower layers are a combination of both hardware and software. This physical layer is completely hardware. Now, in this figure, as we have seen, so D7 means the data unit at layer 7, and D6 means the data unit at layer 6. And at each layer, we are adding a header, or it is also known as this H is basically a header or a trailer. And whenever we are taking the data, why don't we have a header or a trailer at physical layer? Because at the physical layer, this is completely, whenever the data passes through the physical layer, it is changed into electromagnetic signal and actually transported through a physical link. So upon reaching its destination, the signal passes into layer 1 and is transformed back into the digital form. Then the data units move up in the upward direction. So when we are sending, it moves in the downward direction. When we are receiving, it will move in the upward direction. At each block of data reaches the next higher layer, the headers and trailers attached are removed, and whatever data it needs to be received by that particular layer, action is taken upon them. Now, by the time it reaches layer 7, your data will come back into its original form. So suppose this system has written, hi, my system name is 01, and this is being sent as a message. So at each layer, it will attach the physical address, the formatting, etc. And here it will keep on removing all those unnecessary things, and at D7 you will have this actual data. So by the time it reaches layer 7, the message is again in the appropriate form, which is to be given to a recipient or the receiver. Now we will see all the layers in details. So these are the layers mentioned. Physical data link. Now I have mentioned it in the direction from top to bottom. Now we have the first physical layer. So physical layer coordinates the functions required to carry a bit stream over a physical medium. So this transmission medium is a physical medium, and it coordinates all the functions to carry from this physical medium. So it deals with the mechanical and electrical specifications of the interface and the transmission medium. So basically, it will decide how many bits can be sent, and whether the transmission medium is optical fiber or wired or wireless. It also defines the procedures and functions that physical devices and interfaces have to perform for this transmission to occur. So the physical layer is concerned with the following. Uh, so these are the important functions of the physical layer. So I'll just mention it over here. First is the physical characteristics. Of interfaces and medium. So the physical layer defines the characteristics of the interface between the devices, that is the transmission medium, and interface between the devices and the transmission medium. It also defines the type of transmission medium. And the next important task of the physical layer is representation of bits. The physical layer data consists of a stream of bits, that is zeros or ones with no interpretation. So to be transmitted, bits must be encoded into signals. So the bits cannot be sent as I'm sending a 1, a 0. So they need to be sent as a signal. So the signal can be an electrical signal or an optical signal. So the physical layer defines which type of signal it should be, whether it is electrical or optical. Now the third thing is data rate. So, or it can also be known as the transmission rate. So the number of bits to be sent each second is also defined by the physical layer. So in other words, the physical layer defines the duration of a bit. Now after that, we have the synchronization of bits. I'll just mention it over here. Synchronization of bits. The sender and the receiver not only must use the same bit rate, that is, they are using the transmission, how many bits are being sent per second, that should be same, but also the clocks must be synchronized. So suppose if physical layer from the sender is the first bit is sent at first second or first millisecond, then here also the receiver must receive it at first millisecond. Okay, so the clocks at which they are receiving and sending must be synchronized. Now the next thing is line configuration. So in this case, the physical layer is also responsible or needs to be concerned with the connection of the devices. So if the connection is point to point, then there must be a dedicated link which should work correctly. That is, there should not be any fault in the line. And if it is a multi-point configuration, a link is shared among the devices. So it needs to be confirmed whether there is a fault among the multi-point line or the point-to-point configuration. And then we have physical topology. So physical topology, as we have seen, is basically how devices are connected in a network. So it can be either a mesh topology, star topology, ring topology. So this is also a responsibility of the physical layer. That is, physical layer needs to know which kind of topology is being used in the network. Now finally, we have transmission medium. So transmission medium or transmission mode. The physical layer also keeps a track or defines the direction of transmission between the two devices. So whether the transmission is, we have seen the three transmission. One is the simplex, half duplex, and full duplex or duplex. So in the whichever kind of transmission medium is, it is the physical layer should keep a track of this. So these 7 functions are the task of a physical layer. Now, if you notice here, uh, the physical layer is receiving data from data link layers, and in this case, it will pass the data to data link layer. Now we will see next about data link layer. Okay. Before that, the physical layer is responsible for movements of individual bits from one node to the next. Okay. Now the next is the data link layer. So the data link layer transforms the physical layer, that is a raw transmission facility, to a reliable link. So basically, it makes the physical layer appear error-free to the upper layer. So data link layer, if we see over here, physical data link layer is basically a medium between the network layer and the physical layer. And over here, also data link layer provides for the reliable transfer of information across the physical link, and it also sends the blocks or the data in the form of blocks or frames. So here the data is sent as a frame. Here the data is sent in the form of bits. Okay, so this is also important and needs to be remembered. So it sends frames with the necessary. So it will look for synchronization, error control, and flow control. So these are the important tasks of a data link layer. So basically, data link layer is responsible for moving frames from one node to the next. So the different task of data link layer, I'll mention it over here. The first is framing. So the data link layer divides the bits received from the network into manageable data units called frames. Okay. So whenever it is giving to the physical layer, it will give it in the form of a frame, and then physical layer will convert it into the form of bits. And whenever physical layer here, in this case, will give it in the form of bits, and the data link layer will convert it into frames again. Next is physical addressing. If frames are to be distributed to different systems on the network, the data link layer adds a header to the frame to define the sender and receiver of the frame. So whenever we are sending frame, the data link layer, the header of the data link layer will be the physical address. That is, it will give the address of the sender and or the receiver of the frame. So if the frame is for a system outside the sender's network, the receiver address is the address of the device that connects the network to the next one. So basically, this means here it will add. So suppose if we have a sender A and it needs to send data to a sender Z. So now in between we have a stream of network or devices that will pass the data from one system or one device to another. So in this case, A will have the data of some network in between, which is X. So here in this case, the data link layer will have the physical address of X, and then again X, the data link layer of X will have the physical address of Z. Okay, so this is the physical addressing concept. If it is in the same network, suppose we have only two systems on the network A and B, and A already has the physical address of B, then here simply we will add the physical address of B. Now third, we have the flow control. Flow control. So flow control is the rate at which the data are observed by the receiver, and it is less than the rate at which data are produced in the sender. Then the data link imposes a flow control mechanism. So basically, if the sender is sending the data and the receiver is receiving the data in such a way that it is, if the sender is sending 10 bits per second and the receiver is only receiving 5 bits per second, I'll just write BPS. Then here the 5 bits that the sender is sent have been waiting in line to be received. This way, if the sender is sending suppose 100 bits, and so 10 bits per second means it is taking 10 seconds, this receiver is receiving slowly, right? So there needs to be a mechanism so that the receiver does not get overwhelmed, or it does not receive so too much data at the same time, or it may be shut down. So in this case, there needs to be a flow control mechanism. Now after that, we have error control. The data link layer adds reliability to the physical layer by adding a mechanism. So basically, if we are sending the data from the network layer to the data link and then to the physical layer, so whenever the data is being sent, instead of zeros and ones, there might be error in the encoding of the bits. So in this case, there is a mechanism to check or to verify whether the correct data is being sent or there is some lost data or damaged data. So error control is normally achieved through a trailer added to the end of the frame. So we add a trailer to the frame. So in the case of a data link layer, we have both header and a trailer to the frame. Okay. Now after that, we have access control. When two or more devices are connected to the same link, data link layer protocols are necessary. So suppose if we have a single link and there are multiple devices connected, then data link layer is the one which keeps track of which device is sending the data and which device is receiving the data. So this kind of information needs to be kept. So that is done by the data link layer, and which is known as the access control. Now, the reason I am mentioning the different tasks of each layer are because if you are writing an essay answer, you need to mention all these points for each layer. So these are the different tasks of data link layers. And in this case, we have the data link layer example. Now next, the data link layer is responsible for moving frames from one node to the next. Now, what do you mean by, so there is one more term actually over here, which is hop. It is responsible for moving frames from one hop to the next. So now what is a hop? We will see it over here. Hop to hop delivery is basically node to node delivery also. So first we will see communication at the data link layer occurs between two adjacent nodes. So to send the data from A to F, so we have device A and device F. There are three deliveries to be made. Okay, first the data link layer at A sends a frame to the data link layer at B. That is it can be a router. Second, the data link layer at B sends a new frame to a data link layer at E. This is what I was mentioning when we have systems connected in such a way that we are supposed to send. So I said about system A and Z, and in between these two systems are connected by another device, a node. It can be a router or another system, which is X. Then A needs to send the data to X, and then X will send the data to Z. So here, the data link layer at E will send a new frame to F. Now here, these are the end systems A and F. We have a link, and B is the intermediate system. There is a hop-to-hop delivery. So the frame from A to B has B as the destination address. So over here, as I said, the H2, the header over here, will have the destination address of B. So A's frame, A has a frame and it has a header and also a trailer. So in this case, the header of A will have the physical address of B. Okay. Now the frame from A to B has B as the destination address. And what is the source address? Who sent it? So the source will be A. Now the frame from B to E will have B as the source address and E as the destination address. Similarly, this will go on. And what will be the value in the trailer? So there will be different error control mechanisms at each case. So different error checking methods will be included. So header and trailer will both differ when you're sending the data from one system to another system, that is among the hop to hop delivery.